Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It is a great day to be in Boston. I'm Rachel Floor, Executive Director of the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation. On behalf of all of my library and foundation colleagues, I'm delighted to welcome all of you who are watching this evening's program online, as well as those of you who are here with us in person tonight. Unfortunately, as you know, the federal government, the National Archives, and the Kennedy Library remain closed to the public due to the lack of congressional appropriation. When you're going through tough times, it's a gift to be able to turn to your neighbors for help. And that's what our wonderful neighbors here at Boston College High School have done for us tonight. Thank you to BC High for opening your doors so that we could host tonight's program. We truly appreciate it. Thank you. We truly appreciate the warm welcome, and I want to give a special thanks to BC High President Grace Cotter-Regan, Colleen Carter, Sarah Felony, and Mark Stallworth for your generous partnership. I'm also so pleased to acknowledge the generous support of our underwriters of the Kennedy Library Forums, lead sponsors Bank of America and the Lowell Institute, as well as the Mass Cultural Council and our media sponsor, the Boston Globe. Before we begin, I humbly offer a land acknowledgement to recognize that the land on which we stand was once stewarded by Indigenous peoples. Our institution preserves history, makes history accessible, and challenges all Americans to engage in the civic opportunity and struggle of helping the nation grow even closer to the noblest ideals of its founding. In keeping with that mission, I invite all of us to learn more about and learn more from our nation's history, including Indigenous history, and contemplate how to honor and steward the land that each of us inhabits. We look forward to a very interesting question and answer period this evening. You'll see full instructions on your screen for submitting your questions via email or comments on our YouTube page during the program. Those of you who are joining us in person have already received cards to write your questions on, and our team will be walking through the aisles to collect them and to share new ones as needed. And for all of us guests here in the audience, I'm going to ask you to take a quick moment to silence your cell phones. It's your most important instruction today. And now for the women of the hour. It is my honor to introduce tonight's speakers. We are just thrilled to welcome Karine Jean-Pierre to Boston this evening. She served as the White House press secretary and senior advisor to former President Joe Biden. She has worked in senior communications and political offices in both the Biden and Obama administrations. Prior to her time at the White House, Karine was Chief Public Affairs Officer for MoveOn.org, and her new book is Independent, A Look Inside a Broken White House Outside Party Lines. And you can all purchase a book out in the main lobby on your way in or your way out. It's also a pleasure to welcome Soraya Wintersmith, our moderator for this evening. She is a politics reporter for GBH News, where she covers Boston City Hall, and is the host of What Is Owed podcast. Before that, she covered the Dorchester, Roxbury, and Manhattan neighborhoods, focusing on how people live and the issues that shaped those communities. Prior to joining GBH News, Soraya worked as a State House reporter, producing radio and television stories for WCVE, now WPVM, in Richmond, Virginia. Please join me in welcoming our special guests.
All right.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening.
Hi. Happy Friday night.
Happy Friday night. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you.
Give yourselves a round of applause for being out here on Friday.
Yeah.
I think that we're going to have a really interesting discussion tonight. Can everybody hear us?
Yeah.
Karine, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. Can you hear me? All right.
I think your mic is on
okay. The mic.
Louder.
Oh, louder.
Project.
Okay. I think they're working on it.
We're in good shape. I'm in good shape.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that our guest has spent years at the center of U.S. politics, shaping national messaging in some of the most intense moments in modern history. She was also the first Black person, immigrant, and openly queer woman to be a spokesperson for a president of the United States. She recently made headlines of her own by stepping away from the Democratic Party and announcing she's now an independent voice in our political landscape. Karine, welcome.
Thank you.
Is this
Hi.
your first fireside chat for this book?
No, I'm tired. I think this is the fourth city that I've been in since. Okay, I will do my best.
Project.
Hello.
Boston's gonna let you know.
I know. That's why I love Boston. They're like, excuse me, but we can't hear you back here. It's like New Yorkers. I'm a New Yorker, so I understand. So this is probably my third one for the book.
Who picked the cities? Don't say your mom.
Who picked the cities in the sense of this tour? The publisher. I'm not really sure where I'm gonna be until I get there, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is what's happening today.
We will settle
Yeah,
for
but
being your most historic stop.
Hey, I love Boston.
So you recently took the big step of declaring yourself independent. Yeah. I imagine that, along with the experience of having been a White House insider, gives you a really different perspective watching everything that's happening in Washington right now. Yeah. What is it like to observe headlines, speeches, the shutdown on this side after having done that job?
It is incredibly scary. It is just, there are not enough words to say how heartbreaking it is to see what is happening in this moment. And one of the reasons I wrote, hopefully you can hear me, one of the reasons that I wrote this book Independent is because I wanted to start a conversation. And when I left the White House, the first couple of days, couple of weeks, because I had a job that I was familiar to people recognized me, and so they would come up to me and they would be like, what's going on? I'm scared. Why is no one fighting? We knew this was coming. What should we do? And I was hearing it over and over again, whether I was at my kid's school, supermarket, airport, and I thought to myself, okay, I want to figure out how to start a conversation, because I believe the two-party system is broken. I took poli-sci. In order for democracy to work, you need a two-party system that is effective and working. And right now, our democracy is hanging by a thread. Some would say we've already walked into authoritarian regime. And history has a wild way of repeating itself. And so if we do not speak out loud, if we do not do something, we're gonna be in a hell of a place. And we already are. I mean, people are suffering. People are being pulled off the streets. And it's not just immigrants and migrants. US citizens are being pulled off the street. You have military folks in the cities, and that's not their job. And we're supposed to, respect the military, and they really put their lives on the line and make a commitment, and they're being utilized in this way. And for me, it is just daunting to see what is happening in this country. My country, a country that I love and adore, and my parents came here for a better life because they understood the promise of this country, even when it wasn't kind to them. And so, I worked for someone for 4 years who was incredibly decent, a good person, who worked really hard day in and day out to try to make this country better or to try to help people's lives. And so I learned a lot in that process. And sometimes you have to do something really bold just to start a conversation. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm independent. I'm not trying to start a third party. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a system that is broken. You have millions of people, and one of the things about the book, Independent, it has a lot of history in it. And I talk about why third-party organization, you have to be really mindful about, about that. But there are millions of people who are independent right now who can't exercise their rights in the primary because closed primaries. When there's a closed primaries, independents can't participate. You have young people, more so, that are becoming independent. And so that has to tell you the system currently isn't working for everyone. And folks are saying, these millions of independents are saying, okay, the Democratic Party nor the Republican Party represent me right now. And so I'm trying to start a conversation in a way that the system is broken, look what's happening, our democracy is hanging by a thread, And I want to see the leaders that I believe in the Democratic Party doing more. I just do. And as a private citizen, this is where I decided to take my voice. And for example, here's an example. Going into the Trump administration, he had nominees that were woefully unqualified. And you had Democrats in the Senate that gave up their power and rubber stamped these nominees. And I thought to myself, you guys are not powerless. You're not. But by doing that, you're giving up your power and your leverage. And the reason they did that, I think, I haven't spoken to them, but my guess is because it was business as usual. And Project 2025 was very clear where we were going to go in this administration. We should have been prepared back in November after we lost. And they weren't prepared. And so I am just trying to push the leadership in that party from the outside to do the right thing. We should not be rubber stamping something that we know is going to hurt the people that we care and that we love. Wait,
Hey,
hold on.
hey. Whoa.
Here's the thing.
Whoa.
But we're gonna follow protocol, obviously, but I'm gonna answer that. Wait. Okay, they can't hear me. Okay,
They're trying to fix
they're gonna
it.
get up. This is how I'm doing that. We're actually having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We are. Right? I mean, I've been on TV, I've been on podcasts, I've been talking to you all. This is the beginning of it, is having this conversation. And here's the thing, you don't have to agree with me. I'm not looking for, I'm just trying to start a conversation. Because one of the things that are happening right now is we're not talking to each other. We're just not. And look, we have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere. And people keep talking about 2028, and I'm like, guys, it's been 10 months. And look where we are. We may not even get there. And so now is the time. Now is the time. And I'm going to be very honest, this is an experiment. It really is. I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm having the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Hartford. I was talking to college kids in Springfield, Connecticut, Springfield College. And what I told those young people, more than 500 of them were there, I encouraged them to get involved in the process and to not turn away. It is important that they're curious and that they vote and that they vet and that they actually get involved. And if they want, that they run for office. My job, I believe, is to encourage people to not be silent, however it looks like for you. Because in the chaos that we're seeing right now, that chaos is the point. They are trying to make us fearful so that we stay silent. And so I'm trying to talk to young people and say, hey, get involved. Get involved. Just because I'm saying I'm independent, I'm not saying not get involved. That's the opposite. I'm saying to get involved. And hopefully, people are like, well, why are you talking about that? Hey, you know what? You're here, and I'm having a conversation. And so that's the point of this. And it's been happening. It's actually been happening.
To the audience members' question, how do you figure that swearing off your allegiance to the Democratic Party and becoming an independent is the right way to encourage people to get
Because
involved?
for me, I believe I have to step out of the party system in order to push the leaders. And I'll be very clear about this. What I have been watching is a party that was very much part of for my whole entire political career. When I hear people say, hey, we're not gonna fight for this community because it doesn't poll test well. We're not gonna fight hard enough for migrants or immigrants because we have to focus on this. You know, that's heartbreaking to me.
Karine, I'm going to ask you
Yeah.
to pause because it looks like we're going to switch to handhelds.
Hello, hello. Okay.
Better?
I'm
There
so
you
sorry,
go.
guys. There we go.
She's on a roll. I want to make sure that you hear her. So go ahead, Karine.
No, I'm just, I feel that everything that makes me who I am is being thrown under the bus in this moment because of canned talking points or because of poll testing. And we have to remember and not forget, and I know some people were in this fight in this room, civil rights movement was not popular. There were items on the human rights movement that was not popular, but doesn't mean you lose your moral compass. Doesn't mean you throw people under the bus because, oh my gosh, in this moment, we can't talk about that. And so that broke my heart when I was hearing that, just in these past 10 months. And that's not okay with me. And so I'm not going to sit in a party and be loyal to a party and they're not representing me. This is my way that I want to have a fight, that I want to be in this. Again, encouraging people to be involved, to be curious, to get involved in your own way. And it started a conversation. It has. Again, not everybody's going to agree with me, but we're talking.
We are. Here we go. You announced your departure from the Democratic Party back in June, and in the book, you talk about your shift to being independent being brought on first by frustration by what you observed inside the White House after President Joe Biden gave a faltering debate performance. I am using your word.
Mm-hmm.
And then frustration deepened as Vice President Kamala Harris campaigned and eventually lost the election. So I just want to start with how Democrats treated your boss.
Yeah. So I want people to just step in my shoes for a second. Those 3 weeks between the debate and when the president decided to pass the torch to then Vice President Kamala Harris, I was living this incredibly personally as the White House press secretary. And what I was seeing was I was dumbfounded. I was dumbfounded. More than 100 days left in an election. And you can have your feelings that you have about our administration, the Biden-Harris administration, or even Joe Biden. But this is a man that, again, I said this earlier, was a decent human being and woke up every day and worked really, really hard to get things done. And objectively, had a successful couple of years in this administration. He did more, this is objectively, more in this administration than most presidents has done in 2. And made historical things happen, even on a bipartisan level, which was insane in this political environment. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing and hearing. And it was heartbreaking to see the way this campaign, this really cruel and mean campaign, went after him. And then when there was talk about, well, who would be next and who would be next in line, and he had endorsed Kamala Harris, who had been vice president, there was talk about not making that happen, and a brokered convention and an open primary. I'm like, guys, we don't have a lot of time here. And so I just couldn't believe what was happening. And just think about it. Every morning I would wake up and we'd be like, okay, what's going to happen? And I was battling it out with the press corps every day, which, by the way, respect the press corps, freedom of the press. And I think it's really, really important, especially what we're seeing today. And our job is not to, we're not supposed to agree. They're holding powerful people to account. It's not supposed to, and you have to respect that. And it was tough. It was hard. And I was just kind of, what is going on? What is happening here?
I have to ask, Karine.
Yeah.
You've addressed this a couple of times, but I have to ask just because I think many people have been surprised to read that you say you didn't have any suspicions that the president might be struggling to stay sharp. I think in the book you point to Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson's book, where you say they accuse Biden and its aides of trying to cover up his mental decline. You write, I was technically part of the president's inner circle and saw Biden every day and saw no such decline. I never read Tapper's book, and I don't ever plan to, because that does not track with what I saw in the White House.
Yeah.
So Karine.
Here's the thing, and I always couch it with, he aged.
Okay.
Visibly. And we never denied that. I mean, you can't. People have their own eyes. They saw. And he talked about it too. He spoke a little softer, he walked a little slower, and he aged. No one is denying that. But you have to understand, I was one of the rare people, or the folks in the senior staff, who saw him every single day. I traveled with him more than 95% of the time. And I was with him on Air Force One, Marine One, internationally, domestically. And he was someone who was so sharp. And there were times, I've been telling this story, he would call me into the Oval Office or call me on the phone, and I'd be like, oh God, oh no, like I'm not ready. I don't know what he's gonna ask. Am I gonna have the answer to it? Because he challenged us. And I've known him since 2009. Yes, he's not the same person that he was in 2009. He's not. But to say that he wasn't there or more than capable, he was capable in doing the job. We had a lot going on when we came in. COVID, the economy. There was racial inequality and racial uprising that was happening. There was climate change. Let's not forget about what was happening on the foreign policy side. Mm-hmm. We had to turn that all around. And it was his experience that helped us start that process. He was leading one of the biggest coalitions that we had seen in decades with the war in Ukraine. That was him. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that he did not age and there was not signs of him aging, but to say he wasn't there and wasn't sharp is false. It is just false. And I speak up about it because I don't think that there's enough people speaking up about it. And I am able to do that. And I lived it very personally. And I think he deserves a lot more than what happened. I just do.
There you go. You got into it with Stephen Colbert recently over your use of the word betrayal to describe the way that some Democrats called for Biden to step aside after the debate. I want to give you the space now to tell people, why did you see that as a betrayal, and what do you think a loyal party or loyal party members should have done in the wake of that debate in June?
So, look, I barely remember that interview anymore. It's just like everything is just like flying by. And look, I use that word because at the time it felt that way. It was an orchestrated campaign, guys. It was an orchestrated campaign. It just was. And I also feel when you do things like that, including, how Joe Biden was treated, and also saying, hey, the vice president of the United States should not, be at the top of the ticket after being in the primary and getting 14 million on the ticket and getting 14 million votes. So all of that was problematic to me. But I do think that hurts the party, because he had supporters out there. She had supporters out there. And when you do that, when you have this kind of visceral type of, especially this campaign, it's hurting us going into a general election. It's hurting us. People see it. And I think one thing that people don't know is, like, during that time, those 3 weeks, we were out and about. Mm-hmm. We were in Wisconsin, we were in Philly, we were in Georgia. We were engaging with real people who had also feelings of, Joe, don't go, 4 more years. I mean, they were really also very disenchanted and heartbroken by what was happening in the moment. But we also have to move past that. I use that as an example in my thought process. And he ultimately decided not to run.
Right.
He ultimately made that decision and passed the baton. And now we have to live in the moment that we are in. And it is, and I need our Democratic leadership to have a strategy, to have focus, to really lean into and open up this big tent party that we have talked about, and fight, and fight. I'm just not seeing that. Now, I will give credit where it's due. I'm glad that they've held the line on the shutdown. I really am. And I also want to be really clear here, because there's an asterisk to this, right? There are federal workers, there are veterans and seniors who are hurting here because of the shutdown. So I don't want to.
We're here at BCI.
We're here right here. So we're here right now. And so I don't want to be like hooray and not acknowledge that there are folks who are suffering. But I also am proud of them, because in the long run, if they don't do this, our healthcare crisis, there's going to be a healthcare crisis. Mm-hmm. And it's going to have a long-lasting effect. Now, what they have to do, and give them some advice if they'll take it, is they really got to put this at the feet of Republicans. They really do. This is the Republicans have the House, the Senate. They have the presidency. Under Donald Trump, I think we've had 3 shutdowns. And so they have to be really clear on that messaging. They need to say, hey, Speaker Johnson, why are you giving vacation time to House members? Because you don't want to open up the government. And it has to be really targeted and very clear. And they have to go to the American people and say, this is what's happening. Maybe they do a press conference in front of a hospital that's about to shut down and say, hey, these GOP hikes is going to cause this hospital to shut down. There has to be a communication to the people directly and the community, so they bring them with them in this fight.
I want to skip ahead.
Yeah.
You make a revelation that you weren't surprised by the outcome of the 2024 election. I think that you say you never really believed that Vice President Kamala Harris could win.
Yeah.
And it was based on you having been a Black woman who's traveled all across the United States and experiencing, I think you said, racism and misogyny within the walls of the White House. Talk about that.
Yeah.
And did you feel the same way watching Barack Obama campaign?
So first of all, I want to be very clear. I think Vice President Kamala Harris did a fantastic job in those 107 days. And she stepped up in a way that created a buzz and excitement and energy that the party needed. And it was really wonderful to see her do that. And it's so funny that you asked me about then Senator Barack Obama, who was running. I had a little bit. You remember I don't know if you all remember, they kept on talking about the Bradley effect when Obama was running. And so I worked on his campaign and I worked really, really hard. But I think all of us were a little bit like, okay, can we do this? Can we do this? Is America ready? And he was once in a generation type of candidate, type of person. He was always like the smartest person in the room. He was a great orator and he was able to make it happen. And he had a lot of young people. He energized and excited young people. I was part of his campaign, so I was able to see that. And it was miraculous to see. And to your point, as a Black woman walking through this world, I was hesitant. And look what happened in 2016. So it's not like I didn't have proof, right, that this is a little scary here. I'm hopeful, and I know she's doing a phenomenal job, but part of me is like, is this really going to happen? And so, yeah, there came a moment when she lost. I was like, of course, Karine, how stupid! Of course, this was going to happen. You know, even if she'd worked her hardest. And so, I think 2 things could be true. You could be hopeful because you see how that campaign is going and her leadership, and then you could be doubtful because you are in reality of where we are. Mm-hmm. And we are in a reality right now of where we are.
Mm-hmm. You have a chapter in the book called The Sisterhood, and you had a lot of reflections in there, It's the only chapter that speaks to a specific part of your identity. You didn't write to immigrants, you didn't write to the LGBTQ community. You dedicated a whole chapter to Black women.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to stop you there. You say that you're not encouraging wholesale desertion of the Democratic Party. You already noted it's a two-party system. You think it's still the group for those who are politically concerned about inclusion and reproductive rights and the environment. But you also say Democrats need to be put on notice that Black women's votes aren't available on speed dial.
Yeah.
Those are her words.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
No, I mean, look, I was very purposeful about this book. I really was. And it's very nuanced and it's very layered. There's history. And I try to not just be like, this is what I'm doing and that's it, and not explain it and not live in reality. I really did want to live in reality. And I wanted to start a conversation. And I dedicated a chapter, Sisterhood, to Black women because Black women have been known to be the backbone of the Democratic Party and to be at the front lines of issues and real life situations that are detrimental to all of us. And they came out 92% in this last election. And it's almost like they say they understood the assignment and showed up like they have every time. And I do think that by and large, the Democratic Party overlook us. And so I wanted to speak to that in a real way and lay out the history and the thinking and some data in that. And so that's why I dedicated to Black women. And we had a Black woman who was the nominee, obviously. And so it was really important at the time, as a Black woman myself, obviously, to dedicate a chapter in this book to them.
I want to veer off a little bit and ask you about the demolition of the White House East Wing, just because the Sisterhood is the chapter where you talk about that being the place where you met with Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson right before Biden introduced her as his nominee. I know that was a very special day for you, and you say in the book, you try not to fangirl when you meet big names, but that is a day that you did not take a picture, even though you were in that historic moment with yourself and the justice and two other Black women. What went through your mind hearing about that after having that experience?
It was historic. It was historic. But the thing is, yes, she was a Black woman, which is amazing and wonderful, but she's highly qualified. Highly qualified. And you see her in action now and you're like, oh, thank God. Thank God. And it's like the brilliance in her gives you hope as well. Look, and I've been saying this a lot, I don't know how closely folks have been following. There is no greater metaphor right now in what's happening in this country than watching a bulldozer go and hit the East Wing. And so it's just, it's just heartbreaking to see what's happening. And then you have to put reality into it too. Like, yes, that's happening and it's awful. But then there are people who are suffering. There are people who are fearful. There's like chaos that's happening that is trying to silence us. And so we have to put that energy into action. Seeing that, I remember when I saw the photo on my socials of, of the East Wing just falling apart. I remember thinking, this is not real. No way this is real. Is this AI generated? No way. And I didn't believe it. I was like, oh, come on. This is the White House. No. And then I did a little digging. I was like, oh.
It's not AI.
It's not AI. It's real.
That is real.
Yeah. It's a wild time. Wild time.
I'm going to mention that I'm taking index cards now, so those of you who have questions, folks are floating around, pass them. Our first audience question, Karine, what are you most proud of during your time in the White House? Are there special memories that stand out?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Mm-hmm. You asked me a question earlier, and you said that I was the press secretary during some really tumultuous, unprecedented times.
That is factual. That is accurate.
And so one of the things that I had to do for myself, and I'll share two great moments, but one of the things that I had to do for myself every day, and I remember making a promise to myself, and I'm going to say this too, it was an honor and a privilege to be White House press secretary.
Mm-hmm.
It was an honor and a privilege,
Mm-hmm.
and I would do it all over again because I can't believe that I had the opportunity to do that. And so when I would walk into the White House campus and walking through the halls of the West Wing lobby, going to my office, I would have this excitement of, I can't believe I'm here. I'm here working for the most powerful person in the world. And so I remember telling myself, the moment that I don't feel that, I need to leave. Because it is the most incredible, important, one of the most important jobs that you and opportunities that you can have. Remember, Black woman, immigrant, queer. I never thought that that's where I would be.
Mm-hmm.
So every day I appreciated the opportunity that I had that was given to me. Two moments that were really important. I'll share this one. I have a now 11-year-old. When I started at the White House, she was 6. And so she came to the White House a lot. And my colleagues called my daughter the little mayor of the West Wing. She would go off and just, people would text me, I just met your daughter, or, your daughter's here. She's so, and they would be really kind. They're like, she's so great, she's so amazing. And one time she went to see the folks in Outer Oval. They're the folks that manage the president's schedule and obviously the Oval Office. And one of my colleagues had her write a note to the president. And she went into the Oval Office and left it on the Resolute desk. The next day I was on Marine One, and I think they told me before. And, the president was sitting like right next to me, and he had his visors, the Biden visors on, and he turns around and he looks at me and he goes, "What's up with your daughter leaving love notes?" And I was like, what? And I was like, oh, yes, she left you a note. And the note basically said, thank you. I'm paraphrasing. It said something like, thank you so much for protecting all of us. I love you, Mr. President, something like that. And it was like the sweetest, cutest thing from a kid. And it, really in the mouths of babes, right? They see things just in a different way. So that's one. And then I think the biggest moment is the first time that we had a state dinner. Remember we came in when there was COVID, 3,000 people were dying a day when we came in, and it was just awful. And we got to December of 2022, and it was the first state dinner that we were able to do where people can actually come together. And I took my mom to the state dinner. And my mom had never met Biden, which I was surprised, but she had never met him. She had been to the White House before during Obama, but she had never met him. And so she was really happy. She was my +1. Your colleagues do the things that they do, and they say to your mom how amazing you are, which I really appreciated. She met Biden, the president, gave her a really big hug. And at the end of the night, she said to me, "This is the best night of my life."
Aww.
And the other part of this is, it was the last time that I saw my mom. 2-3 months later, she was diagnosed with colon cancer. She's still with us, but she was diagnosed with colon cancer stage 2, and she has never been the same. And it was the last time that I saw her in her whole full glory, walking and being the mother that I remembered throughout my life. Before then. And so I was happy that I was able to give her that, because now it's different. She's living a totally different life.
Wow.
And, I was in New York, and she wasn't able to come to any of the things that I did in New York because she's in a different space now. Mm-hmm. And so that was a really special moment. And as we bring up the East Wing, now that's all gone. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Another audience question. That was amazing. Thank you.
No, you're
That's not in the book.
It's not in the book. It's not in the book.
What do you think individuals can do now at this stage to make a real difference in defending democracy?
I think this past Saturday, I'm hoping it was this past Saturday. All my days
Everything's a blur.
Yeah, it's all days a blur. The 7 million people that came out to No Kings rally. That is democracy in action. You have to work, in order to protect our democracy, you have to work at it every single day. And that was the third one. So it grew by the millions. And it was about protecting our freedoms, protecting our democracy. And everybody, regardless of your ideology, I believe, regardless of what you believe, came together across the country and said no to having a king, and to said no to a dictator, and wanted to protect our democracy. And that is one way of getting involved. And I also think you take that energy and you do something with it. You know, you start, a social group, or you join a club, you do something, or you get involved in your community, because politics is local. So you have to get involved, and you have to really be very strategic about it and do your research and figure out, okay, what's next? And there's a couple things that I talk about in the book, which is really important, because I do think that we have to be independent thinkers. Being a voter right now is so different than it's ever been. There's misinformation, disinformation. We have to do a lot of work to get to the bottom of what's true. We have to be our own fact checkers. We have to educate ourselves. We have to make sure that we have all the information, and it takes work. And so that's what I'm asking and hoping that folks get really attuned to where we are in this moment. It's very hard. That's one of the things that we had to deal with misinformation. We were constantly having to beat back misinformation and disinformation. And the world is very different with social media.
You're an independent now, and you can speak freely for yourself. Given that you watched up close a campaign that people are going to discuss for decades to come, and given that a big part of that campaign's trajectory hinged on an incumbent's late game decision to exit, do you have any thoughts about how an incumbent should determine when it's time to step away from public office and not seek re-election and make space for new and up-and-coming leaders?
You know, it's a great question. And what we dealt with last year was so incredibly unprecedented. And I haven't thought about that question, so I really want to process it a little bit.
Take your time, Ms. Jean-Pierre, take your time.
And look, I think that we're going to unpack this moment, or that year, like you said, that administration, for decades to come. Yeah. And I do believe Joe Biden is writing, President Joe Biden is writing his book. And so my hope is that he will speak for himself, and we will get some insight on what he was thinking and how he processed that moment. And I think that will help us as you know, as we think about history and moving forward. I always try to put things in perspective, because every situation is different. And I always go back to 2023 when he had to decide if he was going to run or not. And the reason I go back there, because we have to look at what was happening in the moment. And in the moment, these things were true, which was midterm elections was not a red wave. Mm-hmm. We did better than expected. Mm-hmm. It was actually a historic midterm elections for an incumbent president for their first term. And that was lifted up and praised, and that praise was given to the president. He was an incumbent. He was the only person to have beaten Donald Trump. And all of those things were swirling and very much factual in that moment. And objectively, he had a very good couple of years of his administration. And I believe those things came into play in thinking about running for re-election. And the party leadership at that time were encouraging him to run for re-election. And so I think we can't forget what was happening in the moment when he was making that decision. Again, he'll speak for himself. And so I give him that grace because those things were actually factual. But at the end of the day, more than a year later, he decided to step down and pass the torch. So that's kind of where I leave that, because it was an unprecedented situation and things were in play when he was making that decision. And I really I said my piece, I laid it out very piece by piece in the book, but I also try to come to today and where we are today. 2028, if we don't, may not happen. I'm serious. We have a president right now who could easily say, hey, you know what? No elections. I mean, that's real, folks. How could he do a lot of things that he's doing right now?
First term deja vu.
I mean, it's like the rule of law is out of the window. Due process is out of the window. I mean, we have to be really real about what's about to happen, and we have to double down, triple down now. He's trying to steal 2026. He's not hiding it. He's not. He's vocal about it. He pushed a Texas governor. So, this is just the reality that we're in. That's why I'm like, I don't want to talk about 2020. I want to talk about right now. Right now. Because we may not get there.
Did the Democrats have a problem with right now moving candidates out of the way?
But it's not even moving candidates out of the way. It's not even that. It's like protecting and speaking up. I don't want to hear a sternly written letter. I don't want to hear it. That's very nice for 2 minutes. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear canned talking points. I want to see and hear people action. What are you doing for the people? How are we taking parties out of the system and putting people power in there? 7 million people, and again, it's grown by the millions. How are we utilizing that? How are we tapping into that? So I don't know. This is what I'm trying. I'm trying. This is my.
They see you. They feel you.
This is my way of doing that.
Another audience question: can you tell us more about how your identity as an immigrant of Haitian descent has shaped your views and experience of the Democratic Party? You know where you are, right?
Yeah.
I think we're the third largest Haitian diaspora in Boston.
Somebody.
They want to hear you.
Somebody has it by per capita. Okay. So look, I mean, our identities, all of us, really speak to how we move through this world, who we are, how we grow up, the communities we come from, the household we come from, how we look. And of course, it's affected me in every way. And, people would ask my mom, did you know, what was she like when she was younger? And my mom would say, Karine was a very interesting kid. If she could not figure something out, she would stay up all night trying to figure something out and trying to find an answer. And that is very much true to who I am today. And I've always walked in my truth. I've never hid from my sexuality. Either you love me or you don't. I don't really care. I don't, and let me be very clear. I grew up in a household that was incredibly conservative. Mm-hmm. My mom had a really hard time with it, but she raised a child that expected,
Tell them how you feel, Karine. Tell them how you feel.
That really, she raised a strong-headed kid, and someone who would speak up for me and for others. So I've always lived in my truth. And I understand not everybody can do that. I understand that. Some people, it's unsafe for them to do that. But I have. And I've never denied any of my identities. And look, I wrote this book because I felt that I had a voice and I needed to speak to it. And I knew that it was going to ruffle some feathers. I knew that. And I knew it would be complicated for people. I understand that. But I feel like if I have a platform and I can start a conversation, why not? And I'm not afraid to do that. And that comes from my upbringing. That comes from who I am. That comes from how I've walked through life, unapologetically me.
There you go. This one says, I know that Joe Biden is funny.
He is funny.
What was your favorite quip or gaffe of President Biden?
Yes. I think my favorite one, and reporters would be like, what in the world does that mean? And I'll tell you what it is. When he would say, good luck in your senior year. And it was something that reporters would be like, okay, what does he mean by that? And he would say it all the time.
To non-students?
No, to everybody. He like a reporter would ask him a question and he clearly didn't like the question. He'd be like, all right, go with that. Good luck in your senior year. And it was like one of the funniest things. And there were just some great Bidenisms, especially when he talked about, he's a very proud Irish man. And so he would, have these really interesting Bidenism that was really great. He's very, very funny. And very quick-witted at that too, when he would make jokes or comments. But that was always my favorite because, reporters would be really annoyed. They'd be like, "What does he mean by that? What does that mean?" Yeah, well, yeah. Like,
what does it mean?
What does he want me to do in my senior year? It was just a funny. But he had a few of them. I'm trying to think of others, but that was one of my favorites. That he would, "Good luck in your senior year." Oh, you're gonna do that. Good luck in your senior year, and you'd be like, "What?"
How do you connect city, state, federal issues for a consistent message? This says House Senate leaders supporting, I think you mean the candidate in New York. I think you mean Mondani.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you...
I think that this person is asking, how do you make the election that we're seeing in New York
more national, the national level?
The energy of being an independent.
So
That's
look,
what I think.
yeah. So look, what we're seeing in New York City and with Mamdani, and this has nothing, what his politics, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how he was able to connect. He did something that excited young people in a primary. And it was just talking to people directly. And I think what he understood, and I don't know him, I've not met him, but from an outsider, and I'm from New York, so I have a lot of friends who are in New York City, and we've talked about that election. I think because he had no name ID, and he knew he was an underdog, that he went on a subway, and he talked to people directly. He would introduce themselves and talk about what troubled them, or what is it that they wanted to see. And he captured it on video, and it kind of just grew and grew. And he, did this retail politics that we just don't see as much anymore, door to door, having conversations. And I think that is something that on the national level, we need to get back to. We got to get out of DC, get out of the bubble, stop talking with canned talking points, and actually go into a Republican district. Go into districts that you would never go into, or state that you would never go, and have those conversations and be honest and listen to the other side and hear what people, are really feeling. And look, remember, I take accountability of how we did things, because for us, the economy was getting better. We were doing historic things and legislation, and it didn't connect. It just didn't connect. People weren't feeling it. And hindsight 2020, it's like, okay, how could we have been better communicators on doing that directly with the American people? I mean, a lot of things played into last year's election, not just that. And I talk about that in the book. I go into details about it. But there is something about people felt that they're being heard. One of the things that independents and young people, they feel like they're not being heard. No one's listening to them. And it's amazing what a little thing like that, just having a conversation directly and letting somebody speak, the effect that that will have in that person's psyche or process about that candidate or about that party.
This one says, are you concerned that if enough people follow your lead and leave the Democratic Party, we'll be too splintered in the next election to win? I'm assuming the we is a Democrat here.
Yeah, I don't think I have that much power.
Karine.
That droves of Democrats are going to leave. I mean, look, I'm trying to be very clear about what I'm talking about. It is very nuanced. It is, and I get that, but it's meant to be, because I'm, again, trying to start a conversation. I am pushing people to get involved. Every conversation that I'm having is people to get involved. And I have also said, I actually still line up with the Democratic Party. I just feel that they need to do more. I really do. And I don't like parts of me being thrown under the bus. It's not okay with me. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And I even say, I'm not telling people to leave.
You do say that.
I do say that. I'm not telling people to leave the Democratic Party. I'm saying we have to be critical, even more critical, and more critical thinkers and more curious. Again, I was in front of more than 500 students yesterday, and I said to them, be curious, ask the questions, but please get involved. Please vote. Please, 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 please. It is important. We need them. We need them to be engaged. And so that's my message, is to get involved.
And then what are you saying to Black women? I have to ask this because the way that I experienced after the election, I remember looking online and seeing so many memes, GIFs, photos where Black women talking to other Black women said, we're leaving our hands up. We're going to let the administration be what it's going to be, and we're not doing any more work. Yeah. How are you communicating to Black women that you say are the backbone of the Democratic Party about their disillusionment and their
I mean, that's why I'm calling it out, right? That's why I wrote a whole chapter about it. But Black women, we come out for our communities, and we will still continue to come out. That's what we do.
They're tired now, Karine.
They're tired.
They're tired.
No.
They're tired.
I know they're tired. I know. That's why I have the sisterhood to talk about it and lay out the history and data and the importance of Black women. But Black women are always going to be involved in their communities. They're always going to be leaders in their communities. They're always going to move forward their communities. But we have to acknowledge them, and we have to say it out loud. Like, yes, you're the backbone of the community of the Democratic Party, and you're largely left, not acknowledged. And so that's just something that I'm calling out. But we are in a situation where we all got to get involved, whether it's community level in whichever way that you feel comfortable.
It says, what do you think of Kamala Harris's book?
So I haven't had a chance to read the book. I'm hoping to do that once I'm off tour. I think
you've answered the question about her criticism about support a couple of times.
So a couple. I think it's great that she wrote the book. I think it's important that she wrote the book. I think that we have to, learn from the things that she said in the book, right? And I think that she was an incredible leader, and what she did in those 107 days was pretty miraculous. And she has every right to tell her story. Every right to tell her story.
You had some very direct and fair critiques about journalists and how journalists did their jobs in this book. One of the biggest ones, I think, was a double standard of focus when it came to President Biden's mental acuity versus President Trump's. Talk a little bit about that. Do you think Trump being so popular with his base had anything to do with that double standard?
Look, there's a Trump standard, period. I mean, we see it now. I mean, it's the most insane thing I've ever seen. I mean, when I was press secretary and we were, the press team and the comms team, the amount of stories that we had to beat back and work on age was insane, and I don't see that now. I'm like, okay, well, did you guys see what he just said and did? I mean, he has brown liquid that's being released on people, the AI generated. I heard him speak today, and I was like, wait, what? And there is a Trump standard. There is. There truly is. He's going to be the oldest, president ever? Where's that story? That's something that the media has to speak to. That's something that they have to really be honest with themselves about. And I see it every single day. Every single day. And it blows my mind. I was making a joke earlier this week with a couple of interviews that I've had, and I said, I have like a bucket or a list of things that I couldn't get away with. I think President Obama was the first person to say this. He's like, can you imagine if I said that? Can you imagine if I did that? And I'm like, yeah, I'm with you, President Obama. Can you imagine if some of the things that I saw and I've heard, never. Yo mama? Like, I would never have been able to.
Caroline Levitt,
Yeah,
you picked Budapest.
I can't even imagine if I said that to a reporter. I would have gotten fired. I would not have been press secretary. It's just stunning.
I'm going to end it here. I know that you've said a couple of times that you're not thinking about 2028, but the people want to know, who do you think is our best chance for, not our, I'm a journalist.
Are you an independent?
Who do you think is our best chance for a nominee in 2028?
So I don't think we know yet. I really don't. I don't. Now, let's not forget, like in 2003, or did we know that? That Hillary Clinton or Obama was. We just don't know. I don't think we know. I want to see our leaders now. I want to see some action now. I want to see some teeth and some fight and some grit. And can we please do it now? It's been 10 months and the chaos, and we have to, the chaos is the strategy. They knew exactly what they were going to do. It's almost as if it's been written, they spent 3 years coming up with Project 2025, and the moment they won, they went right to work. I think somebody just said that. I think I just repeated you. They went right to work. And the way they're doing it and the speed that they're doing it, it's just wild. And again, chaos is the point. Don't think it's chaotic because they don't know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. That's the point, to silence us, to fear, to be afraid, to not speak up. And so I say that to say, we gotta act now. Matter of fact, we're behind.
Give us an encouraging note to end on. This last one, I read that you made a routine to fortify yourself for the demands of the job. You had affirmations, and you like to meditate, and you like to exercise. I loved reading that. Give us an affirmation that you said to yourself to keep yourself encouraged while you were on the job.
I woke up at 4:30 in the morning every day for like 4 years, and I would pray, and I would meditate, and I would work out. And that was every single day. I did that, or else I don't think if I didn't do that, I would have survived. And sometimes it was basically laying there and being like, God, please just get me through this day. Please give me the strength and the courage to just get me through this day. Please let me focus on what's at hand, ignore the noise, and just get me through this day. And it was day by day. And everything, just imagine you have a job and you have no idea what's going to happen every morning. Like just none. You have no idea. Like you have a sense of like, okay, the president's schedule, we're gonna be traveling, we're gonna be doing this, I have my briefing at 1:30. Like you have the basics. You know, I'm gonna hopefully bring my kid to work. I mean, bring my kid to school, bring my kid to school, and then go to work. But you never, there was so many crises and so many things happening that there were times where I was like, oh no, this is gonna be a day. So it was like so basic, just trying to mentally, emotionally, physically get through the day and not get overwhelmed and not let your soul be, gutted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're out of time.
Thank you.
Give
Give it up.
You can get copies of the book in the hallway. Karine Jean-Pierre, thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you.
with us.
Fantastic job. Thank you so much. That's the plan.